What you're looking at here on the screen, I probably don't have to explain, but it's relevant to this. In fact, I think it's the one relevant point that could encompass the entire argument we're having now about oaths and promises, contracts and pledges. So much anger from Trump supporters about these supposed faithless electors who really honestly are not bound truly by the Constitution to support any one person prior to the vote. In fact, if you look up the definition of the word vote, it means to choose. So by them simply being electors going in to vote, voting implies choice in its very definition. It's not voting if there's no choice. But I'm sure Trump supporters are going to still argue that just by being an elector that they are now, slaved. Even though we've heard from two separate electors from two separate parties, Chris Supprin on the right, Brett Shafalo on the left, who said basically exactly the same thing, which was exactly what a judge said, Supreme Court Justice, said in 1952 when he stated that electors are free agents, independent, and not bound by any partisan considerations. But let's get back to this. When we put a man into office and we make him take this pledge, we don't believe that he's going to honor that pledge because he's afraid of the penalty for not. We believe that this man is a man of his word, a man who stands by his oaths, a man who stands by his covenants and his contracts and his pledges, a man who doesn't show a proclivity for wavering or equivocating in these situations. Trump supporter, can you really say that about Donald Trump? I mean, I made a video ranting about the man violating his pledge, and I got a lot of pushback saying that it was simply a ceremonial or a symbolic pledge. If that were the case, if that really were the case, where the pledge they wanted was simply a symbolic pledge or a ceremonial pledge that didn't hold any weight, why, in the first debate, why didn't he just leave his hand down? Why didn't he just symbolically agree with the rest of them to support each other if it was simply symbolic? See, because he knew something. See, it wasn't symbolic. He knew he had to, absolutely had to, take that, or they weren't going to give him the R by his name. That's why he made such a big deal of going out and getting cameras and having the big piece of paper with his name and his signature on it. Because he knew how it would look if he didn't take that pledge, because during that campaign process, that little 6 months, he needed you to falsely believe that he was a supporter of the Republican Party. He needed you to believe that. When, in essence, this is how his choices in his mind worked. He believed he was the best choice for president. But if he couldn't be president, he believed the next best choice was Hillary Clinton. Why? Because if they didn't give him the nomination, he was going to go run as an independent. He even said he would. And he knew that the direct effect of that would be exactly what happened in 1992 when Ross Perot pulled 20 million voters away from George Bush Sr. and then by default gave the election to Bill Clinton. And he knew he could do the exact same thing here. He never labored under the illusion that he could run as an independent and win the election. He wasn't going to get a single Democrat to come vote for him. He knew that. So in his mind, either he became president or Hillary Clinton became president. And his actions prove that. And this is the man that you believe to be a Republican, a man that you believe to hold to conservative values, a man that you believe is a man of his word, even though he said and wrote and signed his name that he would do one thing, and then 6 months later verbally, positively affirmed that he was reneging on that written pledge. Now, I had somebody also put in the comments about how they should try to get Chris Suprin on Texas verbal contract law, that a verbal oath down there, a verbal statement, is a binding contract. Well, okay, let's apply that same thing to Donald Trump. If his verbal affirmation of reneging on the oath is binding, then guess what? We can no longer say that the man held to his oath. He reneged positively on his oath. And while we're looking at this oath, we have to ask ourselves a question. Do we believe Donald Trump will do his very best to uphold this oath if he doesn't feel like the American people are treating him fairly? If he thinks like the American government is treating him really poorly and believes that the American people have not held up their end of the bargain by making him, president, is he going to decide that someday the Constitution doesn't work for him and it's no longer his duty to uphold it? Let's, not really rely on our own opinions here. Let's look at what this man has to say for himself. Because I'm a big believer in that, because there's a lot of opinions out there. You're never going to hear me say on the channel, well, there are reports that, or people are telling me that. We're going to go with what we know. What we absolutely know based on what people have said. So here's out of his book. Care about the sense. To this day, if I feel a contractor is overcharging me, I'll pick up the phone, even if it's only for 5 or 10 grand, and I'll complain. People say to me, what are you bothering for over a few bucks? My answer is that the day I can't pick up the telephone and make a 25-cent call to save $10,000 is the day I'm going to close up shop. Now that seems like, on its face, is a good business principle to do everything you can to save money, but what he's really talking about here is covenant breaking. He's talking about entering into covenant with people. To this day, if I feel a contractor is overcharging me, if you're going to be in a contract with a contractor, his charges are going to be upfront. You're going to know what they are before you sign the deal. So when you make the deal and he says, I'm going to charge you X dollars to do X work, and you enter into that covenant, that's a binding covenant. But what he's saying here is, when the other person, goes so far into it and gets committed to it, why not give him a call and see if you can get a few bucks knocked off the top? It's only a 25-cent phone call. Why not try? But that's what this is. This is covenant breaking. And Trump supporters are like, well, no, that's not what he means. Well, let's see. If this really isn't what it means, then I shouldn't be able to find evidence of that in his past. Well, let's look here. Donald Trump paid contractors on his Taj Mahal casino just 33 cents on the dollar after the casino failed with a promise of 50 cents later for the business that survived long enough. You can read through that, and you can Google it yourself. I could read you the entire deals, but basically that's exactly what he did. $0.50 on the dollar here to Eric Silverstein. Molded Fiberglass had to write off $2 million of a $3 million bill. $95,000 lawsuit for missed legal fees. 2 Virginia lawyers accused Donald Trump of failing to pay their firm. Florida chandelier business paid him 50% down and said he shouldn't have to pay him anymore. Doral Resort was forced into foreclosure because he didn't pay a Florida paint contractor. Freehold Music Center, 8 baby grand pianos. Yamaha, full-size Yamaha grand pianos. $100,000. Got forced into taking 70 cents on the dollar. You can go on and on and on and on and on. There's a whole list here. And I covered this in a rant that I did before about this signed pledge. And then when it didn't work, he took it back. It didn't work. He was done. He only needed you to believe that he was somebody who was going to support the Republican Party up until a certain point. And after that, when that pledge no longer worked for him, that oath, he just decided to throw it away because that's how he works. That's how he works. That's how the man operates. It's been his modus operandi his whole life. This woman dared to challenge the man with his own quotes and now lives under armed guard. This woman was one of the most popular conservative news anchors out there, and she questioned your leader, and now she lives under armed guard. I have seen so many quotes, so many threats on my page for even questioning the man. People saying that he is the reincarnation of King Cyrus from the Bible, that God has his hand on him. God has his hand on him. I refrained from reading from the Bible, but I just can't anymore because this man embodies everything that we were warned about. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind, to do those things which are not convenient, being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. That's this man. If anybody wants to take umbrage with any of those characterizations of this man, if you think that I have said that he's a fornicator and that he's not, or that he's full of envy and he's not, if you believe anything here that I just listed doesn't or cannot be applied in a provable way to Donald Trump, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear it, folks. You know, this thing, this art of the deal, it stuck in my head for so long about there was this other time when a leader altered a deal after certain things changed that weren't convenient for him, and I couldn't remember what it was. And then in the middle of the night it dawned on me who it was and what it was. And I'll let this man speak in his own words.
Altering the deal, pray I don't alter it any further.
Have a good night, folks.